You guys know the score. It's 2017, which means I'm going to give you 17 Yu-Gi-Oh deck ideas to try out this year. Now obviously these are going to exclude things like ABCs and Metal Foes because those are meta and everybody's got that. Instead, I just picked decks that I thought were really fun, really interesting, and a bit under the radar. So yeah, most of these are pretty easy to get your hands on, and as a change for this list, I'm actually not going to be super scripted here. I'm just reading straight off a list, and it's up to you guys to get these decks, experiment with them, and have a bit of fun. Also, at the end of the video, I'm going to give a few channel updates. So let's get started. So the first deck is Abyss Actors. This is a pendulum archetype that came out in Destiny Soldiers, and it's actually really cool. Most people wrote it off because, you know, it's not as good as like Metal Foes or Performance Pals, but it's actually pretty unique. They use Abyss script, spell, and traps, which basically have pretty normal effects, but when your opponent destroys them, they have much more destructive effects, like bouncing their entire field type effects or banishing 3 cards from their extra deck. So it's really cool, and of course the pendulum mechanic means you'll be spamming these monsters out over and over. They even have cool effects to get their monsters out of the extra deck and back into the hand, so it makes it really easy to set your scales. And if you're picking up Destiny Soldiers, you might as well try to pick up Dark Lords. Now obviously this is one of the more expensive decks in this list because this deck sort of almost became meta but didn't quite make the cut. Still though, it's really fun. You're spamming out huge monsters over and over, and you're able to use cards like Allure of Darkness and Trade In. This is actually one of my favorite themed archetypes just in the game, and they've got lots of powerful spell and traps with effects basically like Monster Reborn that you're able to reuse from the graveyard. The deck can have a few consistency issues, but the fact that you can run, you know, all of the monsters plus lockdown cards like Arc Lord Christia is incredible. Next deck's Magnet Warriors. This deck took a huge backseat to ABCs when they were both released, but you can actually get most everything you need by just buying 3 copies of the Yugi structure deck, which is really easy to get, and a few extra cards came in Duelist Pack Rivals of the Pharaoh. Basically, the new Magnet Warrior monsters are able to tribute themselves off in your opponent's turn, like dodging card effects and stuff like that, and get themselves in the grave, and the more that you get in the grave, the easier it is to summon their boss monster, which is Berserkion, the Ultra Magnet Warrior, or something like that. But basically, it's able to destroy cards each turn, and it floats when it dies, plus all the spell and trap cards support, you know, rock monsters, which that's actually really cool, so you can combine this deck with a few other rock archetypes, and have a lot of fun. Next is Felgrand, another structure deck archetype. So a lot of people threw the Felgrand support into decks like Blue Eyes and Red Eyes, but the deck is actually pretty capable of standing on its own. You've got like Paladin and Guardian of Felgrand that kind of let you search your monsters, get them in the grave, and recycle them and stuff like that. Plus Arcbray Dragon makes summoning the Divine Dragon Lord itself really easy, and the Divine Dragon Lord, when it gets summoned, is able to banish a card, get a lot of attack points, and you'll find out this deck actually has loads of good recurrence since it can use Return of the Dragon Lords too. And of course, if you want, you can combine it with other dragon archetypes. Amorphages and Heretics and Dragoonies come to mind, and yeah, I suppose Red Eyes and Blue Eyes as well. Next deck's Crystons, which is a turbo synchro deck. Basically, you're able to synchro summon in your opponent's turn with their tuner monsters, which is always awesome and really disruptive. And the synchro monsters that you're making are also slash tuners, so that means that you can use them in your opponent's turn to make even bigger synchros, like, you know, those ones that take a synchro tuner monster? Yeah, those. Now the one caveat to this archetype is that you can only make machine synchros, but when you look at the library of machine synchros, it's actually pretty big, and so there's a lot of good stuff to pick from. Plus what's really cool is this deck's going to be getting more support in Raging Tempest soon, so worth giving a look. Then we've got Chemicritters from Invasion Vengeance. This is the new Gemini archetype. It's got Catalyst Field, which makes summoning them much easier, and you can combine them with a lot of the old Gemini supports, so think things like Blazewing Butterfly, things like Supervise. When I played around with this deck, I combined it with Phoenix Gearfried because I was able to use Trade In since it's level 8, and the bigger Chemicritters are also level 8. Plus it made making their Xyz monster, which is rank 8, really easy, and let me tell you that Xyz monster is actually really powerful. It makes your opponent get rid of cards and protects your Geminis, so this deck's a lot of fun to play around with if you just want to have a good time. Next we've got Predaplant, another Invasion Vengeance archetype. Now this is one that's going to be getting more support soon, so it's worth sticking with, but they're dark plant monsters and they put predator counters on your opponent's monsters. What's cool about these is it makes their monsters level 1, so this gives your Predaplant some cool effects, but more importantly, because your opponent's monsters are level 1, it means that your opponent can't actually use them for rituals, synchro, or Xyz summons, at least not very easily. And this deck can actually make Starving Venom Dragon, which is the cover card, so thought that was pretty neat. And of course, you know, Gigaplant and Lone Fire Blossom and Miracle Fertilizer all work here as well. Next is Subterrors, a deck I've actually mentioned a couple of times on this channel because I'm kind of interested in building it myself. It's a TCG exclusive archetype, and that's always a lot of fun because you know that you'll get some cool supports. It can be a bit pricey because a couple of their cards are like ultras and secret rares, but it's not like super meta, so that's okay. Also, the cool thing is it's a flip effect deck, but you're actually working with really big monsters that have like good stats and powerful effects. And you can combine it with things like prediction princesses. I've even seen Shaddoll variants of this and variants that use like, the Pot of the Forbidden card. So it's one to play around with. Then there's SPYRAL, a deck that's actually really weird to me. I've never really understood entirely how it works. It's another TCG exclusive, so there will be at least 1 or 2 more sets of support, and that's great. I've seen lots of different profiles of this deck on YouTube. A couple have been like synchro variants. I've actually seen like one Xyz variant, if I'm correct. It uses SPYRAL Super Agent, I know, and it can kind of keep coming back and destroying stuff. And I know at least one of their cards works with machine duplication. This is actually one of those decks where I haven't played too much with it myself, but I like seeing what other people do with the archetype, and I'm interested in seeing what comes with them from Konami. Next deck, Cyber Angels. I've actually mentioned this one before. This deck had like all of about a week's worth of meta hype, and then it kind of died down, but they're a really cool ritual archetype. They recover advantage whenever you tribute them, so that's really neat. And you can combine them with Star Seraphs, which is the more popular way of doing it, but you can even use them with like stuff like Heretics, and that's a load of fun. They actually keep getting new support, so that's also really cool, and they're not too tough to get your hands on. Plus, you can use all the regular ritual support that you know and love. You can combine it with like Saphira, the Dragon Queen, or you can use it with like Herald of Perfection. So lots of versatility in this, and they're all light monsters, so you get like Honest and stuff like that. Really fun, and a deck that I just think is sort of a spiritual successor in a way to Necroz. Another deck is Tremids. This one went completely under the radar in my opinion. It's a cool rock archetype from, I believe, Dark Illusion, and it actually has 3 different field spells that it works around. Their field spells have a couple of different effects that, give them attack boost and stuff, float when they die, and that's all really cool, which means you can use Terraforming, assuming that card doesn't get limited. I hope it doesn't. But yeah, and because it's a rock archetype, you can actually combine it with a few other rock things like Quakimeru and other rock support cards. Now the one restriction is that you can only make rock Xyz, and there are only a few of them to choose from, but the deck can stand on its own, and it's one that I hope gets more support, and I hope more people just try out because it's actually really fun and easy to get a hold of. Then there's Lunalights, which is actually becoming more and more popular for being a really powerful OTK deck. This is one of those decks that, can fuse over and over and over and regain advantage, but the best part is that you can actually sneak a lot of games from under the toes of meta decks because this thing can put so much damage on the board so quickly. And this deck is able to use cards like Tinky, which help loads, and it's also full of dark monsters, so stuff like Allure comes to mind. Anyway though, this deck is one of the ones that's pretty simple to play. I actually recommend it for beginners, and getting the cards, again, is not very difficult. Next is Amorphages, which was a pendulum archetype that just kind of went completely under the radar as well. These guys are actually anti-meta based, so it kind of reminds me more of maybe something like Cleaforts. Whenever they're out, your opponent basically gets restricted from using, say, spells or traps or monster effects, unless it's like, Morphage card. The thing is, they're kind of tough to keep on the field because you have to tribute monsters, but their spell and traps do help a little bit with that. Amorphages have been teched in other decks, like Goliath gets teched in, say, Blue Eyes, but the deck itself doesn't get a lot of love, and I think that even though it's a little bit tough to get because some of them are higher rarity, it's a lot of fun, and you don't really see all too many anti-meta decks in today's sort of era of high speed. Then there's DINOMIST, a deck that I actually recommended in my 5 beginner-friendly pendulum decks, but there's not a whole lot more to say about it other than the fact that it's really simple to play, and in my opinion, it's just a great pendulum deck for a new person to get a hold of. You're able to protect your Dinomist monsters from being targeted or being destroyed, and of course they have their own effects, mostly involving like swinging over stuff in battle and piercing and negating effects. They've got some spell and traps to search them out. Just give it a try. I mean, like, these cards are almost all commons, so it's a really good one. Then there's Shiranui, which is another deck that kind of had its like 15 minutes of fame in the metagame, and it's still pretty good. Obviously, Shiranui Solitaire alone is a great card, but the entire archetype is great. Spiritual successor to just zombie decks of old. When they get banished, they get cool effects. They can use cards like Gold Sarcophagus, cards like Psyframe Lord Omega, and it actually is one of those decks where if you are rich or something and have a pile of desires, it works pretty well in that too. Shiranui, it's just a good time, and they've been getting a couple of different supports for the past year, so it's maybe one of the more expensive decks on this list, but it doesn't necessarily have to be, and you can still use old zombie support in it, which is, in my opinion, the best part. And finally, we've got the Dark Magician Girls, which are basically like, cherry and kiwi and chocolate and all those different fruits and flavors and stuff. These all came in the Dark Side of Dimensions movie pack last summer, which is going to be getting reprinted here in a couple of weeks. So it's not hard to get these cards. They're not really all that expensive, but the Magician Girl deck can function entirely on its own without Dark Magician, and I think that's really cool. They all have good floating effects. They all are really tough to get rid of in battle. So this is just one of those ones where like it's kind of a good fan service deck. Obviously everybody loves Dark Magician Girls, so if you're hyped for the movie or you just like the card itself, these are worth giving a shot. So that concludes 17 Yu-Gi-Oh deck ideas for you to try out this year. Obviously, if you've got other suggestions, feel free to leave them in the comments because these are all lots of fun decks and I'm sure I missed a few. Anyway though, so social media, follow me on Facebook, follow me on Twitter, and I've got an announcement. I've actually made a Discord server. For those of you who don't know, Discord is a gaming chat service where you can basically make your own server, and it's just got loads of different channels where you can talk about stuff, you know, you can do like trades, you can talk about deck building, critique, ban list stuff, whatever. You can talk about, you know, anything Yu-Gi-Oh related with other Yu-Gi-Oh players. So join my server, I'm on there, and also I'll be getting, you know, like the Twins and Trell on there soon, hopefully. So if you're interested in that, there's a link in the description, and sponsor stuff is down below. Check out TCGplayer, and today only, like, you know, January 1st, 2017, there's actually a 5% kickback on anything that you purchase. So if you buy any singles, you'll get 5% of what you paid back in store credit. Really awesome, so check them out. Anyway, Happy New Year's, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you give it a like, share it with your friends for some cool deck ideas, and I'm going to be making more videos as per usual. Look forward to the next one soon, and I'll catch you guys later.